Tuesday, November 30th. Can I get a roll call, please? Are we taking roll call?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
My apologies, Mr. Chair. Our city clerk is in the meeting next over. Cavada?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Here.
Rivera?
Here.
Guzmán?
Here.
Hernandez? Dodge.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Good evening. Item 2 on our agenda this evening is presentation oral communications. This is item 2A is oral communications for the public. This is a time that any member of the public may speak in front of the Community Redistricting Advisory Committee meeting on any item that is not in the agenda this evening. Would any member of the public like to address us on any item that's not on the agenda? Good evening.
Good evening, Chair. I just want to thank the committee for their long and hard work. It's not an easy process. Lowellhurst product of the redistricting process back in 1989. So it's a long road, a lot of adjustments along the way. You know, I proposed a map to you, but I don't want that to be like a cascade of everybody has to have their own version of the map. Let's just try and stick with what is the requirements that the state has. It's clearly what the best interest of the residents of Watsonville really are, the community of interest that exists, the detailed geographic boundaries, and the equalization of population within the parameters that the state dictates. So I want to again thank the committee for their long and hard work, and hey, we're not done yet. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you for addressing us this evening, Councilmember Hurst. Is there any other member of the public that would like to address us on oral communications, items that are not on this evening's agenda? Seeing as I don't see any hands raised, is there any members of the public on Zoom that reflect the oral communications?
No, there are none at this time.
Thank you very much, mysterious voice from wherever you're coming from. I'll bring it back to the commission or the committee. Any members of the committee like to address us on any agenda item that is not on this evening's agenda? The item? All good? All right. I'd like to say what a beautiful day it was, and very typical for December, and I'm sure that global warming has nothing to do with it. Move on. Item 2C is a presentation on redistricting by Special Counsel Tom Willis. Tom, are you with us this evening?
I am. Can you hear me?
Actually, yes, we can.
Yeah, Erwin, did you want me to, I was talking to Beatrice, did she want me to go ahead and make that presentation? Is there someone new that would like that? It's just a quick recap from last week, from last meeting on the standards.
Sorry, we do have several new members of the community that are here. If you could leave your presentation, that'd be great.
Great. Then I'll just do this very quickly since you've heard this before. And Michael, if you don't mind, perfect. He read my mind. Good evening, everyone. This is Tom Willis, Special Counsel for Redistricting. And I would just like to go over the criteria that the committee has been evaluating when looking at possible maps. The criteria are found in the charter provision of the Watsonville Charter Section 413. But the basic criteria are here. You can see them on Michael's PowerPoint. The first, and these are kind of in order of importance, is equal population. We talked about, the committee has talked a lot about this because they've talked about equalizing population among districts. And in particular, the standard here is that you do not, to be presumed constitutional, you want all of your districts to have a total deviation of no more than 10%. So you want to be under 10%, which simply means that the most populous and the least populous districts, you add those two percentages together and you figure out, are they under 10%? And that is what you are looking for. Committee has spent a lot of time looking at this already, and I think is now very well aware of this criteria and using it as a basis for some of the alternative maps. The second one is federal law. The federal law has two provisions that we need to keep in mind, although I don't think either really are going to be applicable here. The first is the Federal Voting Rights Act, which requires to make sure that minorities are not, their vote is that they have an equal opportunity to elect the candidates of their choice. That, however, the Voting Rights Act, we are keeping a close eye on that, but given the fact that all of the districts have a majority minority Latino citizen voting age population, that law should not come into play. The second federal law is just a constitutional requirement, and it's kind of the inverse of the Federal Voting Rights Act, and that simply is that race cannot be a predominant issue when drawing or justification for drawing lines. So it can be considered, and obviously you have data that the state requires you to look at when you're drawing lines, but race cannot be the predominant purpose for drawing any particular line or boundary. Then the next are kind of the traditional criteria of redistricting that is found in the charter provision for Watsonville, and they're traditional. The first is contiguity, or you just want to make sure that all of your districts are contiguous. That means simply that they can't have can't be separated by, they can't be two blobs on a map. They can't be separated. They have to be internally consistent. The second is communities of interest. This is one that we have spent a lot of time on in the last 3 meetings or so talking about. And that is, it's a little bit amorphous, but basically it is a contiguous landmass of people that have a shared interest or purpose. It can be anything, and Michael looks to community input to get this. It can be different for each city, whether it's about being close to an airport and the residents near an airport have an interest in sound and concerns about sound or noise. It could be folks that live in a rural area or in an urban area. It could be downtown interest. It could be zoning. It could be neighborhoods, communities, or people that live near a park. It could be a variety of things, and we look to the community to provide us information about that. The next is compactness, and that simply is the concept that we all get used to when we look at maps. Does that district look compact, or does it reach out in broad fingers and try to pick up population in far remote areas? That is less compact, that type of a district. So we want to try to keep our districts compact. And then finally, we want districts that have natural boundaries and street boundaries or large natural boundaries. You want to follow geography and natural boundaries and streets to the extent that you can. So that is a whirlwind tour of the criteria that you all are familiar with. If you have any questions, please let me know, but we'll get on to the more interesting part of the night with Michael's draft maps. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Does any members of the committee have any questions for Tom this evening regarding the presentation we had? Thank you very much.
So I guess I do have a question, and correct me if this is a question that should be asked later. But I know that Tom touched upon the topic of making sure that the plan that we go with does not disrupt the voter accessibility, voter accessibility to minorities. Is that correct, Tom?
Yes, that's the Federal Voting Rights Act.
Yeah. And so we need to ensure, right, in our process that the map does not disrupt that within the city.
Yes, but just to kind of respond briefly to that, the Voting Rights Act has in order to apply it, because you're using, by definition, when you try to remedy the Voting Rights Act, you are using race as a criteria. So, the Supreme Court has said, okay, you should only use the Voting Rights Act if you can meet 3 factors. And the first is, whether a minority group can consist of a majority of a citizen voting age population within a district. And here, for Watsonville, all 7 of the districts have majority, minority, Latino citizen voting age population. So by definition, you don't have a Voting Rights Act issue, because every single one of your districts, as currently drawn, kind of meets that threshold, if that makes sense.
Thank you for that clarification, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from the committee members? Thank you, Tom. Mr. Willis, appreciate that.
course,
Item 3 in our agenda this evening, it's a public hearing. It's a plan review and additional direction. Presentation first. Staff report by demographer Wegman. Good evening, Michael.
Good
Michael here
evening.
with us?
Yep, good evening. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Very good. I'm going to share my screen so you can see the rest of the presentation, and then we'll go through the additional maps that were presented based on the work of and the additional feedback from the last meeting. As a reminder, we are conducting an additional public hearing to receive further input, review plans, including those revised draft maps. And if there had been any additional public maps, though there were in fact no additional public maps received since the last meeting, and then providing the additional direction for if there are additional draft maps you need before your final scheduled meeting on December 9th. I'll note I'm just going to present the additional draft maps that were presented. But again, you have available to you all of the plans, public and draft maps from the prior hearings are all available for your consideration. So this is, as a kind of reminder, was an add-on meeting that wasn't originally planned. It was added on because we had some delays in getting the online redistricting software launched. So normally this would actually be in sequence kind of when you were settling on a map. But we still have that additional meeting to do that. So, in this meeting, if you feel like you've got the menu, you've got all the options, that's perfectly fine. And then you can just kind of contemplate what you actually want to order off the menu for the last meeting. But again, if there are additional maps that are required, we can put those together between now and December 9th. So again, as your prior maps, as was noted, you have the current lines, which once conform to the 2020 census geography, and you're familiar with those 3 places where those changes had to be made, including one area that did affect was a populated shift. You have the current lines as adjusted. We had the green, red, and blue plans prepared by me, along with 2 public plans. And then based on direction, 3 variants of the green plan were created. The primary goal of all those variants was to take the green plan and unite the downtown corridor into a single district, District 1, and then to try to leave districts 1 and 2 underpopulated, reflecting the fact that there were concerns that the census probably didn't capture everyone in those districts. And then reducing deviations to the extent practicable those were secondary criterion. So those weren't necessarily applied to all the plans, but were things that the commission discussed during the course of its last meeting. Plans Green and Emerald were actually put together during the course of that meeting. Plan Pine was put together by myself based on that direction received in the last meeting. To just kind of orient you to those maps, there are two common elements in all three variants, which are that this small area in green was shifted from, and this is relative to the green lines, was shifted into District 5, and this longer area was moved into District 1, again with that goal at the end of uniting the downtown corridor into a single district. The plans differ in 3 different places: this singular block and whether it's in District 5 or District 6, these 2 blocks and whether they're in District 2 or 7. Those were both changes that were discussed in the last meeting, and in different plans where there was direction to make those changes. And then the third area is these 3 blocks that are right near, I believe there's a middle school there, and whether they are in 2 or 5. Those were changes that were made, again, based on commission direction to me to look at those earlier changes to unite the downtown corridor while reducing deviations. And those 3 blocks ended up helping contribute to reducing those deviations. So those are really the 3 hot spots that we're talking about, along with the changes to affect the downtown corridor. So as I meant, before I move on and show those 3 plans, just as a note, there were no additional public plans that have been received as of the November 20th deadline. And I checked the districtor account right before this, and we had not received any as of now through there as well. So with that, I'm going to switch my screen share and bring up the software. This is the interactive software that you saw previously. Again, we have all of the different options loaded, so I'm just going to present the 3, but you have them all. And what you're looking at currently is the green plan. So these are not the current boundaries, these are the green plan, just so everyone knows what we're looking at. And just like last time, I'm going to overlay the 3 variants so that you can see where the changes are, starting with Emerald. And again, you see the common element, which is the changes around the downtown corridor to unite that area. And then in this plan, the only additional change is this singular block that was moved to help balance out the population and get it within those acceptable levels. And you can see the final result here. And that plan has a 9.7% total deviation. So it's just kind of on the edges of those limits, but does achieve those goals. Returning back to the green plan and looking at the line plan. And what you see with the line plan is, again, that singular block moved, but again, 2 additional blocks now moved between districts 2 and 7 with the same changes in the downtown corridor. And if I click the right thing, you'll see the results of that plan with those 4 sets of changes all made. Again, the final plan, and this one I'll spend just a moment more on because it was the one created outside of the last hearing, which is the Pine plan. Again, those 2 common changes. Once those changes were made, District 5 was a little over and District 2 was under. And so because that was the biggest contributor to your deviations, we didn't change District 6, didn't change District 7, and just really limit it to trying to balance out the deviations between those 2 districts, which is why that line was just extended down as we zoom in to follow. This is 5th Street and then Madison, and add those 3 blocks there into that area to kind of finish that rotation. And the result, as I zoom back out here and looking at that same area, again, is the downtown core united with this additional extension. These are, again, all changes on top of the changes that you had previously seen in your green plan. This plan does have a smaller deviation than the emerald or the lime. At 5%, it is still slightly higher than the green plan, which is at 3.4. But again, all 4 of those, in addition to all the other plans you have, are legally compliant and would be options available for consideration. And with that, I'm going to stop, put back up your current lines, and see if there are any questions here before you move on with the additional items on the agenda.
Michael, since you have the current plan put up where we're at, can you highlight the 3 changes that you mentioned on the current plan?
So the green plan, as a reminder, made so this is when you said the 3 changes, you mean the conforming to the census geography changes, Mr. Chair?
I believe so, yes, because there was a census tract that was split. And can you define that for members of the public that might not understand what I'm talking about?
Yep. So this is the existing lines as adopted, as currently in force. The census geography in several places had census blocks that did not conform to that geography. And so when I say did not conform to that geography, what I mean is that, and I'm just going to highlight a census block here. These green lines are the census blocks that were used for the 2020 census. And as an example, if I click on this, that red highlighted area, that is a single census block. And as drawn, it is divided between districts 1 and district 4. Now, this area that is in district, the bulk of it is in district 4, but this little area that isn't in this case is again, I always forget if it's a USPS or a UPS sorting facility. But because you can't, it is not best practice to split census blocks. You have to do something to correct for this issue, and in essence, take that entire highlighted red area and put it into one district or another. That issue came up in 3 different areas in the map. The first is that area we just discussed. The second is this little area right here that's basically following the freeway and the freeway off-ramp. Both of those areas have 0 population in them. The one area that does have population is right in this area where, and again, I'm going to highlight the census block. You have a census block here. Whoops, that's not it. Where you have a census block that was divided between districts 2 and 6. So ultimately, you will have to draw a plan that takes this highlighted red area and puts it into one of those districts. Now it is up to the commission and then the council to make a decision where that is. That is an entirely discretionary decision. The one decision there is not to just keep it as is, because again, in this area, there are people that live in both of those areas and they need to be united into a single district. So under the green plan, to kind of get back to the history on this, the green plan made those changes to conform to those census blocks and then made a couple of additional changes at commission discretion, namely to move this small area that had been identified in public testimony to be united in District 3, moving these 2 census blocks into District 7. And then there were these 2 census blocks that had been moved into District 2, though under the variance, those actually got moved back into District 1 with more area in District of the downtown quarter moved into District 1. So that is it was a change and then a change back in essence. And those were the changes that were made under the green plan.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Reitman. It's time for the committee members, clarifying technical questions, any questions that we'd like to ask Mr. Wagman on his presentation from the committee?
Green plan does not unify the downtown district.
No, I believe it, I believe the green plan is in front of us, and so it keeps the status quo.
So I think I heard the question on the green plan. And again, the green plan was a plan that was originally put together based on direction to correct for those split census blocks and then make several additional changes to further reduce the deviations down from the levels there. So that's why you end up with that total deviation in that plan of 3.4%. Again, the changes from the current lines to the green plan were to correct for those 3 areas where there were split census blocks, and then the 3 additional changes that I just described.
The only question I have is which plans unify the downtown?
And you may have to speak up. I didn't hear the question or have it repeated by the chair.
Question was, which plans unify the downtown? But
So
it's-
the 3
again, the
plans.
boundary-
So the 3 plans that were designed to unite the downtown corridor were the Emerald Plan, the Lime Plan, and the Pine Plan. So that all 3 of those plans use the starting point of the Green Plan. And then aimed to unite the downtown corridor in District 1. And this is the Emerald Plan on the screen. Unite that in the District 1, and then had variants in those 3 areas that I demonstrated earlier in order to accomplish other goals or balance deviations.
Okay, thank you.
And the current, can you refer to the current boundary line between District 1 and District 2? So we're, people at home understand where the line is we're talking about.
Sure. So if you look at the current boundaries right now, District 1 and District 2 follows along Main Street until you hit, I believe that's Beach Street. And so that area that is just to the north of Main Street, that is to the south of Beach, is the area that's being moved in order to kind of further unite that downtown corridor.
Thank you very much. Are there any additional questions for Mr. Wagman? Mr. Wagman, yes.
So in none of the variations of the green plan, did we include the unification of the Clifford apartments? Is that correct? Because I know that there were a few community members that was a concern, because right now the Clifford apartments are split between District 4 and District 5, I believe.
That is correct. All of the discussion at the last meeting was to look at uniting the downtown corridor within, make variants on the green plan. There is a plan, or there are 2 plans actually, that do speak to the Clifford apartment situation. One is the blue plan, which you see here, which does in fact unite that downtown corridor. It just wasn't created with that direction, with that purpose. It just happened to do that, unite that same area. And then the other is a publicly submitted plan by, I believe, a committee member, Rodriguez, which again unites that downtown corridor. It just wasn't the actual specific direction that this plan was put together with that purpose. So there are the 5, so to clarify, there are 5 plans that do unite the downtown corridor. The 3 new ones were done with that specific purpose.
And the ones that unite the Clifford apartments are the blue plan and which other plan?
The Rodriguez plan.
Rodriguez plan.
And you'll notice a sizable difference in those because the census tract has shifted. Or can you explain that to folks that are viewing at home?
Sure. And I'm going to go back to the existing boundaries and bring back up those census blocks again that we were discussing previously. And the Clifford apartments are, we're going to zoom in here, are right in here. And the problem with the census geography is that half of the Clifford apartments are in, whoops, are in this census block. Oh, is that the right one? Hold on one moment. I'm just remembering where my geography is. So half of the Clifford apartments are in this census block. And that is obviously a oddly shaped census block. And the other half is in this census block. And so that makes this large chunk of population that if you're going to keep the Clifford apartments, which are right in here together, everything highlighted in red, which of course would then include these entrapped blocks as well, has to be in a single district. So when you look at both the blue plan and the Rodriguez plan, that is a reason, not the only reason, that you see the more significant changes, because you have to move a larger portion of geography than may actually, make sense if you knew if somebody had been there from the federal government and looked at it, then may make sense to address that particular issue. A lot of other people have to come with that change.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for Mr. Wagaman from the committee? Thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. Before I open the public hearing, because I was concerned about the Brown Act, and we have a majority of the city council members present today. Are we in any kind of conflict?
No, we're not, because this meeting was noticed according to the Brown Act. So the fact that there's more than 3 council members, there's no problem.
Thank you very much. I'd like to open up the public hearing. This is where under item 3A, plan review and additional direction. This is a public hearing where any member of the public may address the Redistricting Advisory Committee this evening. Any member of the public like to address us this evening? Good evening. You might have to talk loud just because.
Well, is it recording?
Yeah. It's all that newfangled equipment.
Okay, so can I give a question? Ask a question? It's hard to read this without seeing street names. So I'd like to know, on the great state of Texas, District 7, does it come down to Beck Street? Is that the bottom line? On the green plan, that's which one we seem to be discussing.
I believe it's the same boundary line, and that would be the Beck Street. I believe it is. That's what it appears to be, and I believe in our discussions.
And then, then we go over to East Lake Avenue, and you take some of that section from Tuttle. Because that's currently, I think, in District 7. And you put that in too, is that correct?
On the green plan, are you asking correct?
Yeah, the green plan.
The green plan is status quo in that area and all along that part of the boundary line you're asking about. It should be status quo because we didn't make any changes to that.
Nothing to District 7.
I believe an area that we just talked about that has to be corrected due to a census.
Mr. Chair, did you want me to step in?
Yeah, please, you're going to get me in trouble.
So the question was, what changes had occurred to District 7 under the green plan? Is that correct?
Correct.
The only changes, so these are, again, if you look right now, these are the current boundaries as in operation. I'm going to overlay the green plan, and you can see to District 7, it's just these 2 blocks that were moved that are moving the boundary from Vermont Street to, is that Bronson Street? So it's those 2 blocks are the only changes made to District 7 under the green plan.
So they're going into District 6.
They are being added to District 7. Those 2 blocks are currently in District 6 and are being added to District 7. So this is the green plan line, correct, right there. So it's this area right here that's being changed.
Okay.
And that's because of the census blocks?
That consists of 2 census blocks, correct? So it's the census blocks bordered by Vermont and Delaware, and the census blocks bordered by Delaware and again, Bronson.
And is there anything where it goes below Beck Street?
No,
Again, there are no changes to the existing boundaries beyond those changes.
this is a public hearing and any member of the public may address the commission. Good evening.
This question actually is for Mr. Willis. And it's about further clarification of a earlier question asked by one of the committee members. You mentioned that every district, all 7 districts for the city of Wattsville meet the voting age requirement for the Voting Rights Act. And so I just need clarification, when you say meet the voting rights age, does that mean that each one of these persons that is 18 years or older are all citizens and can vote?
No, so what I was referring to was in order to determine whether the Voting Rights Act should or should not apply, a jurisdiction has to satisfy itself that there are 3 criteria that are being met. And what I mentioned was the very first criteria, which is that a minority group could be a majority of the citizen voting age population within a particular district. So the threshold for determining Voting Rights Act, whether it applies or not for that first prong is the majority of citizen voting age population. It does not mean citizens, although you are looking at data that Michael can explain is gathered not through the census, but through an ongoing 5-year American Community Survey, where they get information of the numbers in rough estimates, because there were estimates, or not rough, but there are estimates of how many within a certain area, how many citizens or how many residents are of citizen voting age.
Mr. Chair, do you want me to provide that additional clarification?
Yeah, please explain that we draw on population and not citizenship for the folks at home.
Yes, that's, yeah. The equal population, the very first criteria is always just about population. The Voting Rights Act is what we were talking about, and that's a different criteria to see if it applies or not.
Correct.
Well,
So
further clarification is because the Voting Rights Act makes sure that the voting accessibility is not reduced or taken away from those that can vote that are minority majority. And so I'm not understanding your response in terms of about the voting rate, I guess you would say, of these districts. Because if they're not a citizen, they can't vote. So they can't be counted. It's just those that are citizens who can vote. Those are the Voting Rights Act that we have to look at. Isn't that true?
Mr. Willis, do you want me to step in here with some?
Yeah,
of
do
the
you also display the one of your atlases showing the CVAP numbers, and maybe that would help.
I was just gonna think.
Yeah,
So to clarify, again, districts, there's the first criterion, which is districts have to be of equal size. And that is based on population. How many people are there? Not voting age, not citizen voting age, how many people, not registered voters, people. And so when we talk about total deviation, we talk about those issues, that's what we're looking at. When we talk about the Voting Rights Act, which is looking at issues of electability. What is the ability of a protected class such as Latinos to elect the candidates of their choice? under that, under the US Supreme Court has said is that you want to look at what is called citizen voting age population. So people who are citizens who are over the age of 18. And that is the closest measure of who is eligible to participate in the electoral process, who's able to vote. Not are they registered, not do they choose to, are they eligible? And that data is not collected as part of the decennial census. So that is not counted every 10 years. Comes from a separate product produced by the US Census Bureau. And what they do is they survey the community every month of every year. And once a year, they take the 5-year rolling average of those surveys. And that's where they produce that data of that estimate of how many people are, again, citizen voting age population. For the Federal Voting Rights Act to apply, you have to be able to draw a district that is where a majority of that district is of the protected class, i.e. Latino. So you need a majority of the citizen voting age population to be from that protected class. And what you'll notice here is under your existing districts and under every plan, whether it's the earlier plans, the revised plans, or the public plans, all of those districts are hitting that mark. There are several other tests that are applicable, some of which talk to the ability of the majority, when the Voting Rights Act was written, it envisioned a city where the majority would be a white majority, being able to outvote the Latinos. And that's where it's really not as applicable in Watsonville because the city is just so diverse. And as I just referenced, every district has a majority. And that's where Tom is saying that the Federal Voting Rights Act is not as limiting on your drawing process as it may be in other jurisdictions. Mr. Willis, is that a fair summary?
That's exactly right, because if you look at all these districts, all of them are over 50% Latino citizen voting age population. So by definition, you are essentially, every district that you already have affords you the remedy that the Voting Rights Act would give you if you were purposefully drawing with that in mind, if that makes sense. And conversely, if you look at the population, citizen voting age population for other minority groups, African Americans or Asians, you are seeing that their populations are very, very small and could never become a minority group. And therefore, the Voting Rights Act would not, apply to those populations.
Thank you very much. This is a public hearing. If any member of the public would like to address this evening. Seeing as, is there anybody on Zoom?
Yes, we do have somebody on Zoom who would like to address the committee. Steve Trujillo, please unmute your mic and begin speaking.
Hello.
Well, yes, I'm right here. I'm speaking to you. I've had my hand up since 6:30. That's almost an hour. So I will try to update my remarks from what I was going to say. And that is that in District 4, that is a FedEx facility. It is along the Highway 1 corridor. And according to 2 FedEx employees who I've spoken to recently because of receiving so many boxes in the mail from FedEx, there are a number of unhoused people who live at the edge of their facility. I don't know if they were counted in the census, but you need to be aware that it's a rather large parcel of land, and to say that it's uninhabited, even though it is a work site for FedEx employees, is not quite true. And the other observation I wanted to make is that Delaware and Bronson and Vermont, these are rather small streets. And in walking through them, even though I campaigned there 2018 but did not go door to door in those streets, I found the population mostly to be Latino, and I could say for a fact that many of them were not registered voters. So if they're now in District 7, that does change the ethnicity to some degree, maybe a small degree, of District 7. As where I live in Parnell Village, there's a slight majority of white Anglo-Saxon Protestant voters and people who live here. Not much, but a small majority. So I'm hoping the commission is taking that into account. And again, to look at, we have 4 states that are now in trouble with the ACLU: Georgia, North Carolina, Texas, and beautiful Ohio, that have basically gerrymandered people of color out of power in all 4 of those states. Should be very interesting. I know I'll be watching. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments this evening. Is there any other members of the public that are on Zoom?
No, there are none at this time.
Thank you. I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the advisory committee. And I'd like to thank the consultants first we spent a lot of time in our last meeting on the green plan and the variations that possibly come from it. There was the discussion about our current districts, even our current districts, with the necessary changes that census changes, we'd still be under a 10% deviation. Is that not correct, Tom? It'd still be a legally enforceable plan. Am I correct?
If all of your, yes, if you're under 10% of population total deviation, yes, correct.
So
And all of the plans that Michael has presented, Michael, you just can confirm that are well within or within that limit.
Correct, but my point for those folks at home is that if we didn't make any other changes, we'd still be within the 10% deviation that the government looks at to be able to have a plan legally defensible. Am I correct?
Correct.
Comments, questions from the committee? Committee member Hernandez?
I have comments and questions. Questions first. Let me get this straight. The variations are the variations of the green. The deviations for them are 9.7, 9.5, and 5. Correct?
I'm sorry, the total deviations were 9, 7, 9, 5, and 5, correct?
Correct. Okay, that's what I was looking at. And then the original green was 3.4.
The original green was 3.4%, correct?
And well, you know, I know I made all the suggestions for all the variations of green.
Yes, you did.
But I think ultimately, you know, I think that I kind of reread the paper and I think the goal is probably to you know, keep those 3 components of community interest and the you know, try to keep things not to move things as much. And I know the red is, I like the deviation of the red, but it really changes the character of all the districts. And so, you know, I think that with the deviation of 3.4 with the green and the minimal changes that it does throughout the districts, I think it's the best plan, I think. I don't know if we're making motions to move a plan forward, but the green plan would be one of the plans that I would like to see move forward.
Is that a motion?
That's motion, yeah.
There's a motion on the floor to move the green plan forward. Is there a second? I'll second it. Discussion. Well, there's a motion to move the green plan forward. But if I'll get a clarification from the consultant, this is not our final hearing. Am I correct? So we've closed the public input for taking plans. So we have another meeting to be able to finalize what we move forward to the city council, and we're making a recommendation to the city council. Is that not correct, Madam City Clerk, is what we're doing this evening?
Yes.
what our task is of our committee, is to move forward recommendations to the city council to be able to adopt the final
And
plan.
that will be done at the December 9 meeting.
That is-
Your final recommendation will be done at the December 9 meeting
For us.
for you, yes.
And then when is the approximate date that it might come before the city council?
The city council is gonna have several special meetings in January. I believe, can you look up the dates? I believe it's January 6th. We're looking them up, so we can,
But it's safe to say in early January. when
Yes, I believe we're having 2 council meetings, special council meetings in January
I believe
Is
it's the
that
6th and the 20th.
Yes.
for redistricting, just redistricting.
For just redistricting,
Yes,
not for any other agenda items like results of the special election or anything.
no,
Mr. Committee member.
I'm just a little curious. If we have another meeting after this, what is the purpose of making a motion to put forward a map to discuss at the next meeting? I just want to understand what if we're still getting together one more time to go through things and hash things out, what is the purpose? of this?
Let me ask for some clarification on that so we can answer properly.
so today you make a recommendation to a motion for the green plan. It will give the public an opportunity to find out what plan you're gonna be recommending. And the public can look at it and come back on December 9th and have comments on it. And then at that time, you can decide if the green plan is what you want to recommend to the council.
So is it appropriate, because we're under our agenda, appropriate motions or direction is necessary? So it's appropriate to make a motion like that
Yes.
at this particular time?
Yes.
Comments, questions for the committee members? John?
Mr. Chair, I think that I'd like to look at these a little bit more and I really don't want to move one plan forward tonight. There's still a lot that has been discussed this evening, and I think that, I think we can wait. I think that would be good. Are you saying that if we go forward with the green plan tonight, that's what we're going to be recommending?
No, it prioritizes and just lets the public know that this is one that we're prioritizing and lets the public look at it.
I think it would be really important for us to at least decide on, obviously not every plan that we have here, but pick maybe like 2, 3, narrow it down so that it gives the public the opportunity to look at them. That way, if they are interested in giving the committee feedback, they have one more meeting to do that.
Very good.
Questions, comments? Committee member Felipe?
No, part of the, sorry for all the work on the 3 different plans, but part of the variations on the Pine, Emerald, and Lime is that we've been going through this downtown revitalization, and it's going to be an ongoing process that is going to take about probably a decade, I think, for it to go through. And I think that with what everyone has been saying, all the experts have been saying about this process, this redistricting process is, for us to try to keep everything status quo and try to do a recount 10 years from now and, get things correct 10 years from now. I think that, I'm willing to step off the thing about, reunifying the downtown and doing it maybe 10 years from now. Once we finish the downtown revitalization and we do some of the things that we've talked about doing in downtown, and once they develop a downtown district, it might be a better appropriate time to do it then, to reunify the downtown at that point. It might make more sense. But I think that at this point, with have a plan that doesn't make much changes and has a deviation of 3.4, I think that's probably the best plan.
I'll echo the sentiments for Committee Member Hernandez. I believe that the potential for we have to look at the census what was done in the census during the pandemic. I believe that there's an undercount of Latino population in particular, but I believe there's probably an undercount in each and every district. The efforts by 45 and the pandemic hindered what was 10 years ago, an all-out effort to count everybody inside the city of Watsonville. Nonprofits were active. The city was active. We did not have those efforts this time to be able to look at particularly in the districts 1 and 2, which were formed historically due to the voting rights lawsuit in 1989. So I think that in looking at that aspect and why I'm supporting the Green Plan is that we'll be able to regroup. The downtown, by the way, might have more residents than it currently does with some of the plans that are currently on the horizon. So you can see a population shift. And I think that undercount would play, actually plays a role in what we're looking at. So that we don't venture off, as I asked the consultants previously, that if we didn't make any changes, except for the necessary census changes, we'd still be within a legal deviation number of less than 10. So I think the undercount supports that. And that's why I'm looking at the Green Plan. Committee Member Rivera?
Yeah, I tend to agree that there was for sure an undercount with the census because of politics, bad politics in DC. And I do think that we should be looking at this at these lines and trying to make as little changes as possible. There's a lot I like in the Green Plan. One thing that I would like to see changed here, and it's a census slice that we talked a lot about, is this slice on Rogers, and I guess that's California Street. I would like to see a map that has that slice put back into District 6. I think that area is a community of interest, both economically, architecturally. It's a unique area, and I do think that it should be consolidated into one district. So that's
that would be that census change.
That's
what we're talking about. Instead of that going into 2, you would recommend that it go into 6. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I agree. The other count is a big problem, was a big problem. And I would want to urge to less radical changes. So we can go with the current, with the green. Yes. So I will take off the motion.
Call for the vote.
Can I get something?
I'm going to call on Committee Member.
I wanted to mention on something as well.
Is it fine?
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thanks. I completely agree with what everybody's saying. But one thing that I do want to recognize is that, yes, we are looking at the lowest possible deviations because of the undercount. I completely agree there. But I also want us to take a look at communities of interest, if possible. I see Rodriguez's plan, Maria's plan, and I think that you have a really great idea. I'm not sure if right now I would feel completely comfortable making such drastic changes, which is why I'm moving more towards the blue plan as well. I think green plan is good, but for the district that I personally am representing, I would want to see those Clifford apartments be united because they are considered a community of interest. The only concern is that deviation. I believe with the blue plan, the deviation, the total deviation adds up to 6.4. And I'm curious to see if there's anything we can do to bring that deviation down.
To piggyback on what Citlali is saying, I was just about to say something similar to the point that, yes, I agree with all of you that minimal changes due to, undercount and all that, but we also have to consider that community of interest in the Clifford apartments and the Clifford corridor. We received 2 community of interest suggestions, specifically addressing those 2 issues, that area in Clifford. And one was in the corridor from Maine to, I believe, Pennsylvania. And then the second one was the Clifford apartments, the Clifford Manor apartments. And I do think that we should take that into consideration, at least that change. So for the next 10 years, that area is represented by one city council member.
And so I guess my next question would be for Michael. Is there anything we can do to bring this deviation down from the blue plan without having to make even more significant changes? Because I believe for the Rodriguez plan, it changed a little bit. Well, I guess. Because Felipe, your concern was that, oh, actually, I might be looking at the wrong plan. So your concern was that it was taking part of District 1, right? The blue plan?
I want to bring it back because there's a motion on the floor and that the questions can call. So I've allowed additional time to be able to ask questions. I'm sorry.
We can go back to the motion.
Thank you.
We're not done yet, so I do believe that I have an informal amendment on the table.
I didn't hear you, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to see.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to see the green map with that census slice around Rogers that we legally have to do.
Maker of the motion be willing to add that friendly amendment.
So are we moving,
We're moving the green plan, which is,
are we moving priorities or are we moving one specific map? Because it would be hard to decide on something where we don't know the deviation and the actual numbers, right? So if we're moving priorities, like we want to prioritize the green plan, the green Rivera plan, and I think you guys are talking about the blue plan with some kinds of changes to it. It's like that would be another 3 priorities.
yeah, but that's another plan. Right now, we have a motion in front of it. Motion in front of us. We still can move other, my understanding from what the consultant was saying and our dialogue is we can still move other plans forward because we're not in the final. Am I correct, Madam City Clerk? So we have a motion in front of us on the green plan. Go ahead.
Just for clarification.
Yes.
Because I'm not sure that we got an answer to this. We can put forward multiple plans for the next meeting.
All right.
Yes. Okay.
That's my understanding. Yes. Yes. And so committee member Hernandez was not objecting to
Yeah.
your amendment. He was asking about, will we come back with numbers on that? So, because
Yeah,
it's not gonna alter the deviation much.
I'd be open to amendment, but with the green and the Rivera green, but it'd be good to see the numbers on that census tract, see how much it deviates, what our deviation is gonna be, because right now it's at 3.4,
I mean,
which is ideal.
I can withdraw the amendment and we can vote on a separate map.
That would probably be the legal.
Mr. Chair, I have the statistics if you wanted them.
Of course you do. Can you flash them up there real quick for us?
To verify, is this the area that we wanted to move? The area highlighted in red?
Yeah, I don't know that it's the whole thing.
I didn't think it was the whole thing. I thought it was smaller than that.
Yeah,
So the issue of that area, just so the committee can see, or the committee can see it, is the block that I think you referenced was this block. And because of that block, you basically are physically blocked off, because remember, districts have to be, so is it just this block and you want to leave this area in District 6?
if we can move both blocks without it creating too much deviation.
So if you move the entire area, your largest district would now be 2.9 plus 2.9, which is District 6. And District 2 would be at negative 2.5. So your total deviation would be 5.4. I would note that that would leave both Districts 1 and Districts 2 in the negative, which was a secondary goal that had been discussed by the committee.
It was a secondary goal to what? Can you clarify that?
To leave Districts 1 and 2 underpopulated on the belief that those were the areas that potentially had the largest undercount.
And making that change, does that keep all the districts within the proper deviation?
Can you
Yes,
answer that?
The total deviation for the plan would now be 5.4%. So it would be higher than green as drawn, but still well within acceptable limits.
Thank you.
Thank you. So did we make that amendment change in this motion? Or we're going forward on this motion? Sorry, which is the,
So he withdrew his motion, his
I
amendment.
lost, I'm sorry, yeah, I'm rusty.
To vote on the first motion. And then you can make another motion to add to do a Rivera plan or something. I don't want to try to do another green Rivera.
I'm gonna go with what we have right now as the original motion.
original
If somebody wants to
motion.
make a motion after that, then that
Recommend
would
the
be
green
fine.
plan. Yeah.
Okay, so the motion in front of us is to move forward the green plan. Okay? All right. Roll call.
Cavadas.
Aye.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Rivera,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Sigismondi,
Yes.
Dodge.
Yes,
The motion carries.
thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to move forward this, I don't even know what to call it. Secondary green map of the main.
I'll second. Yeah.
With the change that you had discussed.
With the change discussed.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second to move forward the Rivera plan, Rivera Green, with a boundary change of a census tract that was discussed previously.
Mr. Chair, does the map reflect the motion, just to verify as displayed?
I believe it does.
Yes.
I believe it does. Comments, questions, discussion?
So 10 years ago, it was like that before? That's
So the existing geography has this area. I'm just putting it up on the screen so you can see. The bulk of that area is in District 2. This piece is in District 6, so it's moving the additional areas in order to unify and deal with the split block issue.
Correct. Great. Any other discussion on this? Step out. We have a motion in front of us. You want to ask a question really quick, Mayor Lucic?
Just, if you do that, are you adding anything else to District 7, or are you just taking that away, that's it?
It's taking from 2, but yes.
It's
So
taken from,
nothing changes with 7?
correct.
Okay, just my clarification.
Thank you. Great. Any other questions? Can I get a roll call vote on the Green Rivera plan?
Cavadas,
Yes.
Hernandez,
Yes.
Rivera,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Sigismondi,
Yes.
Dodge.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Great. Any other discussion or direction for staff this evening?
Yes. Again, to go off of the blue plan, can, Michael, do you know how big the population is at the very bottom of the population size at the very bottom of District 4 that goes into what originally was District 1?
Bear with me one moment. I'm making a variant or a copy of the blue plan so that you can make any potential changes. Bear with me one moment. And the area that was in question?
The area that goes into what originally was District 1. I'm curious to see what the population is there. Like that big chunk at the very bottom of District 4.
So we're doing, is it this area here that you're referring to?
No, where the highway is.
Oh, in this area right here?
That originally had belonged to District 1.
Correct. So I'm looking right now. So this has got 0 population in it. Still 0. Still 0. So that area has 0 population, so it could be assigned to any district. It, at the end of the day, is just about who addresses that particular area, which I assume is an industrial area or commercial area. It does look like it's a commercial area, commercial industrial area, if you look at the satellite imagery.
So if the population is 0 in that area, would we be okay with keeping it like that? Even though it does go into District 1, that's something that the group would feel comfortable doing?
Historically, I wouldn't feel comfortable, you know, that's always been the District 1, and although it's been the workplace of all District 1, you know, it's been canneries, Martinelli's, the Del Mars that work, people that work there. And, you know, it's historically, District 1 has always been, you know, after the canneries left, it was a district that people didn't want to represent sometimes in that area because of the plight in that area, the plight and the flight of all the industries. And it took a while after 2008 to bring it back to life and to bring jobs back into that area. And obviously, a lot of the other districts want it now, but you know, it took work for that district to come back and regenerate jobs in that district. But I think that the brunt of those jobs are for District 1 and 2. You know, not the new, for the working class districts. So it's historically, you know, really part of District 1. You know, a lot of the home ownership came because of those jobs there. A lot of the home ownership in District 1 and 2 came because of the jobs in District 1. So the canneries.
Yes.
And so if we move that portion, Michael, to District 1, that would not change these numbers, the deviation numbers at all, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so can we move that back to District 1?
What does it mean?
We're looking at the blue plan.
Oh, okay, well, what is that area now? Is that District 2?
It's District 1.
Okay.
And so I also see a change or a community of interest that's not reflected on the blue plan that I believe was mentioned by the first plan. It's that
Are you
bottom
referring-
area, yes. So if we put that into District 3, and I believe the green plan also makes that change. So if we put that into District 3, what would the numbers look like, Michael?
So District 3 would be at plus 1.57%. The issue becomes that District 4 is now at minus 6.61. So you would be looking at where to add population to District 4, which would be underpopulated, which would either be pushing you back into the area you just were kind of going through, or pushing you further into District 5. District 5 is overpopulated, District 1 are overpopulated, so you could do that. You would just have to have areas that you are comfortable expanding District 4 into.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, directions? Concerns?
Well, concerns with blue for me is, I know it takes incumbent now and there's too many drastic changes. The deviation is a lot higher. And it's just significant changes in District 1 and 2. I know the Voting Rights Act really wanted us to protect the decision back in with the Pinarello one is to protect District 1 and 2. And this alone right here, blue right here, it changes District 2, or it changes District 1 and 2 from 2 highly Latino districts to 1 highly Latino to 1 less than, I guess, Latino district by taking away a big brunt of Maple, what is it? Maple, Walker, Union, Bacchus, Union, and all those streets that are all Latinos, and it takes it away from District 2, and it leaves it with all the less than Latino districts. And it disenfranchises the Latino vote right there in that District 2 portion. And for me, it's red flags. But it's, you know,
I would echo some of those sentiments in taking the Cary Davis Freedom Boulevard area and placing it in District 5, where in the Clifford Manor is split by a natural boundary line, which is Clifford Street. And part of our guidance is to be able to look at natural boundary lines. I believe that area could be represented by 2 city council members, which would give it an advantage. If you had 2 active city council members to be able to represent the Clifford Manor, I think it's actually an advantage. So that's my concern with splitting the Clifford Manor apartments. because the blue plan alters the dynamic on the other end of, to be able to take in that whole census tract, to be able to accommodate. I'm not in favor of taking in that whole census tract. I guess I might as well go on record on that. It alters the shape of the districts. And I believe you're moving one end of the district to be able to take out another end of the district. And that was what previously happened in the previous redistricting for somebody's own political self-interest.
I'm trying to make these suggestions just to hear out folks who had, come to us with their concerns. But to be honest, the more I'm looking at this, the more that I'm trying to figure out how we could possibly make this work. I'm just not sure, to be honest. Mariana, do you have any suggestions of where to go?
Well,
Because they these concerns are very valid, and
yes.
I'm trying to make accommodations, but I'm just not really seeing how we can make this work.
One of the, potentially the way we could make it work is if we address the concern of the District 4 area that, the area where, what do we call it, by Rolling Hills area and Crouch area. If that area can be taken from District 4 onto District 3, and then adding potentially the area from Pennsylvania, like District 4 boundary could potentially be Pennsylvania all the way through Maine. That could potentially balance the.
Yeah.
I'm sure pushing one of my green ones up those tiny little line. It was only changing the
Yeah.
2%.
We're just trying to address the concerns brought to the committee by community members.
Actually, they were brought by a city council member.
Well, there was one, the corridor, that was not brought by the.
Okay,
council
correct.
member.
You're correct.
Mhm.
You're correct. I apologize. I'm correct. Any other comments, questions, directions? For the consultants, any other questions?
So from this meeting, my understanding is there's one additional plan that you want prepared for the next meeting, which was the one that was voted on, which we're calling the Rivera plan.
Correct.
And then you will have the additional plans still obviously available in addition to the, obviously having the two that you've already voted on. Is there any other work that you need from us? If not, I will have that added to your packet for a week and a half from now.
If it's only those two, do you mind putting a little bit more streets on those two? At least on the Rivera line?
You're gonna shift numbers. Sorry, you're gonna shift numbers.
No.
Whatever you want.
No, just
Put in the name, adding the
Adding
name.
names.
Oh,
Yeah,
names,
just
I'm
names.
sorry.
Just the names. Because I'm trying to overlay. I still don't know.
We will definitely will add it to the interactive map. I'm just gonna be honest, I will try to add them for those two maps onto the PDFs. We're just in our very impacted part of the calendar right now, so I will try to add them to the static PDFs, but the online map will absolutely let you zoom in to the house.
No, if you could just make a small map with that one change so that it's highlighted, so that folks can look at that census tract change under the Rivera plan. I think that's what committee member Hernandez was somewhat requesting, with streets on it, so it's kind of clear.
Got it. I will absolutely include that in the PowerPoint for the next meeting, so you have that.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, direction for the committee members?
Okay, never mind. I got it.
No, I think it's a fair request
Yeah,
because,
it is.
so we
Especially
can,
for the public.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, I actually had asked for those, the street names, but you'll get them for this.
Okay. Are we good this evening?
Good progress.
So we're going to have another meeting on, can we clarify what we're going to do at that meeting?
At that meeting on December 9th, you will make the final recommendation to the council. The council will give your recommendation in January. And they will be having hearings in January and February, or until they approve a map before March.
And the date for the public members to submit maps is already closed. Am I correct?
Yes, to the, for the committee, yes.
For the committee or for the public?
For the committee, but the public can always come in and speak on the map, and they can also submit maps when the council is considering the map. Yes.
I just want to make sure that is communicated out,
Yes, it will.
right? Because this is a recommendation,
It's a recommendation.
right? Not the final decision of the city council.
Yes.
God bless them and help them in their judgment. Any other questions, comments? I want to thank everybody on the committee for taking the time to be able to come here this evening.
Good evening. I
Good
just wanted to
evening.
catch the end.
I was just gonna, I want to take the time to thank everybody for coming. I appreciate everybody having dialogue in a civil manner. I really, this is one of the better committees I've been on. And I really thank you all for it. And shows other jurisdictions that democracy works in Watsonville. So thank you very much. And I'm going to adjourn the meeting until December 9th, correct?
Yes.
It's adjourned.
I'm sorry, committee members. I thought this meeting, for some reason, in my notebook, I had